An elderly man, who is without children and lonely, visits his wife's grave every day to bring her flowers and sit beside her for hours. On one occasion, he meets a young lady he doesn't know at the grave who refers to his wife as Mommy, which surprises him greatly. Albert placed his late wife's favorite lilies against her gravestone and gently ran his fingers on the name engraved on it. In memory of Carol, beloved wife of Albert. "How are you doing, darling?" Albert asked her as he sat down on the prickly grass. "Isn't the weather lovely today?" In the sodium gleam of the sun on the slightly chilly morning, Albert was visiting his wife, Carol, again to spend some time with her. He had been doing that for as long as he could remember. That day, Albert spent the whole morning and afternoon with Carol before leaving her with the promise that he'd revisit her the next day. When he turned around to look at her after walking a short distance away from her, he noticed a young woman approaching Carol's grave. His heart skipped a beat when he heard her say, "Mommy." Albert and Carol's love story had been a simple yet romantic one. They had married barefoot on a beach and hadn't told their families about it until they spent a passionate night together at a hotel in Georgia. Carol was a teacher and Albert was a lawyer. Neither of them had a special someone before they met, which is probably why something sparked between them instantly when they met at a friend's party in Georgia. When their families learned about their secret marriage, they expected the couple would soon announce their pregnancy. But that's where it all went downhill. Carol and Albert tried for years but couldn't conceive. The doctors said it was hard for Carol to bear a child due to complications, so the couple decided their love for one another was enough. Carol threw herself into work, spending time with the children around her and finding solace in the fact that she still had kids loving her. But things were hard for Albert, who was hurt that they didn't have any children of their own. Years passed. Carol and Albert grew older and somehow got over the grief of being childless. When Carol retired, she expected her students would visit her as she had been a devoted teacher. But that didn't happen. Carol's students eventually forgot her, which hurt her, and soon after, she was bedridden, counting how many days she had left. Carol was diagnosed with cancer and died in Albert's arms. Nobody around him believed he was the same Albert who once used to be a cheery man. Albert became fragile and weaker day by day, and he only left the house when he visited his late wife. Carol was still alive in Albert's heart, even though she wasn't there with him physically. So, every day he bought the same bouquet for her, not one flower less and not one more, and sat beside her, telling her about how much he missed her. When Albert heard the strange young woman calling Carol Mommy, he was shocked because he and Carol were childless. They hadn't even considered adoption. As he slowly trudged back to Carol's grave on his cane, Albert saw the young woman placing a bouquet against it and weeping bitterly.
Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story.
"I miss you so much," Albert overheard her saying. "I wish I had come sooner. I had to tell you about so many things. I'm so glad I met you." "Excuse me, miss," Albert interrupted her. "I'm sorry, but did you know her?" The woman turned around upon hearing Albert's voice, and his gaze was fixed on her. She had green eyes and a kind smile, but she didn't resemble Carol in any way. "I called her Mommy," she said. "Mrs. Fitzwilliam was all I had when I was a little child. She was an amazing woman. I'm April." "Are you here to visit her?" she asked him. "Oh well, I'm her husband, young lady," Albert introduced himself. "But I don't seem to remember you. As far as my memory can recollect, I don't think Carol ever mentioned any April to me." "We'd lost touch," April explained. "I met Mrs. Fitzwilliam in 6th grade. I was in the playground, crying because I didn't have lunch when she saw me. She got me a sandwich and drink, and she did that every single day, even after I started bringing my own lunch. I'm an orphan, so I lived in a shelter. Mrs. Fitzwilliam said I could call her Mommy after I told her how lonely I felt. It was awful not having parents at a young age. Thanks to her, that void was filled in my life. I had to leave the city when I passed out of school, and I didn't know how to get in touch with her. She was lovely, wasn't she?" "The best," said Albert with a small smile. "If she had told me about you then, I would have adopted you, honey. We didn't have children, and I always wanted one. But Carol was hurt that she couldn't conceive, so we just moved on with the fact that God didn't want us to have kids." April smiled. Looks like you love her very much, Mr. Fitzwilliam. Albert, said Albert. Please call me Albert. So you here after all these years just to see her? I wanted my family to meet Mrs. Fitzwilliam, Albert. She was such a fun and kind person, and I'm glad I met her. My husband and I moved here only recently, and I wanted my kids to meet her too. I couldn't stop crying when I learned she was no more. Oh dear, I'm sorry, Albert said. Carol would have loved that. She would be thrilled. In fact, she loved her students like her own. April and Albert spent the evening together that day, sitting beside Carol and remembering her. When they were leaving the cemetery, Albert invited April to visit Carol often so they could remember her together and share things each of them didn't know about her. April was delighted to do so. As time passed, their meetings and talks evolved into a friendship, and eventually, Albert became a member of April's family. If Mrs. Fitzwilliam were alive today, she would be thrilled to see me call you Dad. I'm grateful that we met, Albert. She must be watching over us from the beautiful skies and smiling.